How's it going, you guys? It's Scott with Everyday Home Repairs. Today I want to show you how to remove baseboard trim, and specifically how do we avoid paint and drywall damage to our wall and get the trim out in one piece. Now we have an assortment of tools here to give you a few different options. Hopefully you already have some tools, but if you have a larger project where you're removing all the baseboard in a room or in your house, we'll show you some options for tools that might save you some time and money and help reduce any damage. So let's jump into it. We'll kick it off with this utility knife. I like these snap-off blades where you can really extend it out. This one's from Olfa and it's their 25mm wide blade. It helps you get in there and start to score the caulk or maybe built up paint. We need to break loose the baseboard trim from the wall, and this is a critical step when it comes to avoiding damage. So take your time and just run it right along that corner and make sure you cut between any other trim pieces that are right next to the one you want to remove. So next up, I recommend breaking out a stud finder. I like this one from Studmark. It's a magnetic stud finder. And you can find that link and all the other tools that we'll talk about right below the video in the description for your reference. Why I like this one, it easily finds the fasteners that are holding the drywall onto the studs, and specifically this one tool actually has 3 different markers you can use. It has 2 of these green little markers that you can take off the base, and then you can also then use the base for your 3rd marker, and here I'm easily able to find all 3 studs in this wall for the baseboard. So why do we locate our studs? And if you just have a normal stud finder, you can also use masking tape if you don't have this exact one. Well, 2 main reasons you want to find those. One, when we go ahead and pry the baseboard from the wall surface, you want to do that at the stud locations. That's going to be the most structure behind the drywall. If you went right in the middle, there's a 16-inch most likely on center spacing between your vertical studs. If you go right in the middle, that's going to be the weakest part, and you probably only have 1/2-inch drywall. So when you pry off your baseboard, you could easily punch a hole right through the drywall, and now you're adding on the list of things to do to get everything back together, because now you have a hole in your drywall. And then 2, when we reattach our baseboard, it's good to know the stud locations, because that's where you want to put your brad nails, or maybe you're using finished trim screws. You have a bottom plate most likely running right along the surface here on your subfloor, and then you have vertical studs. So you're going to be putting fasteners in the vertical studs and then probably hitting into that bottom plate as well. So let's go ahead and pry this baseboard off and show you a few different options for your pry bars. So a standard pry bar like this is going to be a little bit more for your roofing jobs and your asphalt shingles to dig up under the courses of shingles to get the nails out. Mine has quite a bit of tar on it. This one I would not use. It's a little bit thicker than this thin pry bar here, and just not the right tool for the job. If I was going to use this, I would probably put something on the back to protect the wall. But again, you're going to have a higher likelihood of splitting your trim and damaging it. Now, when it comes to a small pry bar like this, which is a cat's paw, this is very effective for digging out nails from a piece of dimensional lumber, like a 2x4. But if you use this on your trim, your surface of contact here to pry that off is so small, you're very likely to punch a hole in your drywall. So I do not recommend this. Now, the 2 I do recommend, a thin pry bar like this, which is going to easily be able to slip behind that baseboard between the wall. Again, we would do that right at your stud, or we'd go ahead and use this just to get it started and then work it loose all the way across that baseboard. So this type of thin pry bar will work well. But then my favorite is actually a trim puller, a specific tool made for this. It has the widest body here, so it's going to distribute the loads the best across this, and you'll be able to just hammer that in and get right behind the baseboard and pry it out easily. So you'll go ahead and start at one end and start to get the trim puller or your pry bar behind the baseboard and work it loose from the wall surface. You don't have to get it all in one go. You can go through multiple times. Now pay attention for the caulk and make sure you have your utility blade handy to cut that loose to make sure we minimize the chance of paint or drywall damage. And then once you have it almost all the way worked loose, you can pry the one end off and pull it away from the wall surface. And some of your nails or screws might stay on the wall and others will come off with the baseboard itself. So go ahead and remove the brad nails from the wall. I have 2 of them in the wall, and I'm going to use a little piece of shim and then that cat's paw we talked about to remove that nail from the stud. And I got one hiding over here in the corner as well. So go ahead and remove that guy. Now the rest of them are still stuck in our trim. There's a few options you have here. What I prefer is these snips, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and snip these guys off as flush as I can, which this is gonna be your fastest way, and it also does not damage the front side of your trim. But if you do not have snips and you just have a pair of linesman's pliers, you can go ahead and grab onto those from the back and pull them out through the back of the trim. Sometimes that will leave a little bit of damage on the front side. This time it actually did not. The filler that was put in on the trim before it was painted actually held up. And be a little more careful on your end here, as it would want to split if you're not careful. Now, if you also wanted to, this would be a time you could clean off some of the extra caulk or paint, whether you just use something like a painter's tool to go ahead and scrape that up. And you can do the same thing to the wall surface as well if you have some caulk or paint left at the top of the trim. And then if I was doing a whole renovation and I'm removing all the trim, this is also where I would label. So I'd label dining room 1. This is my first trim piece. I usually start off here and then go clockwise around the room, incrementing up 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And then I bundle these all together, wrap them in masking tape, and then set them aside. So when I'm ready to put the trim back, it's easy to find exactly which bundle I need and then how they go in the room. So now we have hopefully undamaged trim ready to go back on the wall. So how do we re-secure that to the wall? And before we do that, I need a little feedback from you guys. There is a link in the description, and it'll take you over to a short survey, which will only take you a couple minutes. And what we're trying to do is, one thing as homeowners we can't avoid is homeowners insurance. And if you've been paying attention, homeowners insurance has went crazy over the last year, 2, or even 3. Mine specifically went up 14% last year, but the audience said they're averaging about 20 to 25% increase. So if you fill in the information on your home and it's not your personal information, like your phone number or your email, I don't want anything to contact you. What we're trying to do is pull all of our different data and then give it to you. So if you're in Florida or Texas or Illinois, you can compare peers and say, for a $500,000 home or a $200,000 home or a $700,000 home, what are others paying? Am I paying the most? Am I paying the least? Or am I somewhere in the middle? So I know, should I be shopping around? Again, this is something that we're just trying out. Hopefully it is valuable to you, and we're trying to stay as unbiased as possible. We are not directing you to any one insurer, and we're just trying to give you information. But to do that, we need you to contribute to the survey. If you contribute to the survey, then you can see all the other results, and hopefully that helps you save money in the long run. So thanks for helping out, and now let's put this trim piece on the wall. And specifically what I'm going to be using will be brad nails. Now, I just use this Craftsman 18 gauge brad nailer, and specifically I'll be using 1.5" brad nails. Now we still have our stud locations marked, so I'll just sink 2 brad nails at each of these locations to secure the trim to the wall. And remember, we're hitting the stud to make sure it is secure, not just the drywall. So what happens if you don't have a brad nailer? Then I'd move on to trim screws. You can see it has the smallest head possible, and that's why it's made for trim work. Specifically, these are 1 5/8". Then you'll sink those in, and it should again secure to the stud, so you get a nice secure hole. Now, why do we prefer brad nails? One, they're faster, and they'll leave a lot smaller hole compared to those trim screws. And then last step, we want to go ahead and caulk any of those seams that we opened up. Here I'm just using a squeeze tube of Dynaflex 230 because it's a small repair job. Usually you'd be a 9-ounce tube and a caulking gun to make sure you can lay a consistent bead. And then go ahead and fill in those holes, smoothing them out for the screws and also the brad nails. But don't forget something like between your door trim here and the baseboard trim as well. So here's the finished product, and I think it looks as good as new without any drywall work or painting. If you also think it looks good, go ahead and hit that like button. We appreciate it, and it helps get these videos out to more homeowners. Now, all the links for the products we used are in the description if that'll help you out. And remember, we also need your feedback on that homeowner's insurance survey, and I appreciate you taking the time. Now, I use this exact same process with a few more steps to take a standard outlet location and move it along the wall and up the wall behind a flat screen TV. If you want to check out that project, you can see this video right here. I'll walk you through each of those steps so you can apply it at your own home. Thank you for joining me on this video, and we'll catch you on that next one. Take care.